Okay. Yes, it is recording. Great. So welcome to Coaching and Confidence Tuesday. It is May 11th. We're going to do a quick little discussion. We have, thank you so much, Laura and Michael. And Leah has been nice enough to MC our panel. So let's just jump into it. Leah, I'll let you start.
Sure. And I brought out my microphone just to make it official. So, Laura and Michael, thank you for joining us. So, I'll ask some general questions. I do not have your bios available, but Rachel reached out to you because you are two of many of our star agents at Coldwell Banker. So, I think your information is valuable. So, I'll ask you some general questions and then I'll address each of you with a question of your own. So let me pull up my questions. So first, and either one of you all can answer this question. So how did you get started in the business and how long have you been in the business? So whomever wants to go first.
Laura?
Oh, Laura, you're on mute.
Mike.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, sorry.
There you go.
I've been doing real estate 15 years, but the online Zoom thing for about a year, and I'm still figuring it out. 15 years, 2005, I got my license, and 2006, I started full time. And I just always had a passion for homes. I moved a lot as a little girl, and new construction was one of the homes we lived in. So I was watching homes go up all the time and would walk through them. So it just, my desire to know about homes was more than anything how it started. So
Thank you. And I'll interrupt. Before I did not mention what this panel was even about, and it is what is your job as an agent? So those are the questions that we'll be addressing. So thank you, Laura. Michael, do you care to answer that question, please?
Yeah. Well, so I guess the history for me is my dad is a real estate broker, but in commercial real estate. So I kind of, as I grew up, I've watched the whole process and was always intrigued with real estate and the amount of money that was being made, especially in commercial. So it always intrigued me. I did some construction, so I was a foreman in a union company, so I had a background in construction, and I think that's when it like changed, when the market changed in 2008, and I started doing like rehabs. So I didn't have my license yet, but I was doing rehabs with my father, and we did all right, you know, because properties were really cheap at the time. And in 2014 is when I got my license, and that's kind of how I started. And it's since then it's been my passion. Like I enjoy it. I like to see properties go up, putting people in nice homes, making sure they're happy, you know, that sort of thing.
And so what do you wish you could have done year one of your business that you did? And this question is also for Laura as well. What do you wish you had done one in your business that you
Well, for me, I think I should have joined the team right off the bat to really understand it, the whole just real estate career, because I kind of went like rogue, and I stumbled a lot the first 2 years and just going in circles, not really knowing what I'm doing. And also I chose 100% commission uh, firm, and that definitely didn't help. It was just like big mistakes all around. So I think I regret that part of it. I probably would have been where I'm at now, probably in 2015. Yeah.
What about you, Laura?
I did join a team right away, which was very helpful. I think my biggest regret, or what I wish I knew the first year, was how to set boundaries. So I think that once I realized setting boundaries actually helped me gain business instead of limit my business, it took me a while to learn.
Great advice. Great advice. So for the both, I do hear some feedback. I'm not sure if that's just me. So my third question for the two of you, what have been some of the most successful marketing techniques you've used thus far in your business?
Michael, go ahead.
Sure. For me, I mean, definitely referrals was probably the most successful. That's, I think, just all around referrals is a confirmation of your skill, right? Because someone's talking about you, you're not really having to do the grunt work, making the phone calls. They're actually contacting you. So that definitely, I think, is the strongest. And then, obviously, if you're going online, I really don't like to use it, but it does work. It's Zillow. But we do a big turn on that. So.
Yeah. Similar to you with, referrals, but my most successful marketing technique, I really think is good character. I thought about this question because in the beginning, I did not market spending money because I didn't have money to spend initially. And I really feel like in real estate, you kind of embody being a professional all the time, whether you're hanging out with your kids at the park or, at a restaurant or showing a property. I think good character is ultimately what's going to secure you, people thinking about you for when it's time to sell or buy. And that includes referrals, meaning like they're going to think of you continuously.
And we do have a question for you, Laura, specifically, I believe, since you mentioned boundaries. This is from Sue. What do you mean by set boundaries regarding your area of focus or your daily activities?
Both, Sue, but I really think I mean saying no. If someone says to you, can you do a 5:15 showing and it's 1:00 and it's going to disrupt your seller because that seller, some sellers would welcome it, others it will completely turn them upside down if they have to get their home prepared in 3 hours and kids and stress and or you might have a personal obligation already that you put together because you didn't think you had showings that evening. And I feel like I used to bend over backwards for everything. And learning how to say no helped me provide a certain level of balance. I don't mean no if it's not a good opportunity, but they always come back. And my experience is by saying no, you receive more because you're learning how to balance your time. So if the focus is work or if the focus is personal, I think that it helps your business, and people also respect the boundaries of what you're letting them kind of control, if you will. Does that make sense? Did I answer that?
Yeah, she thanked
Yeah, you totally did. Thank you. Makes a lot of sense. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I've got a follow-up
question.
It's not funny, but it's definitely genuine that Laura says that character is important to her, because it is kind of, I'm going to say, it's kind of what you're known for. You're known for being approachable, genuine, smart real estate agent. That's what people kind of think of. And I think you get a reputation, and when people, it's a relationship business, not only with our clients but from agent to agent. So when you have the reputation from other agents of having character, it just snowballs, and it just creates like an exceptionally good business.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this question is Michael. Would you read the question? Okay. This question is for Michael. So one of your niches is working with investors, specifically on fix and flips. Can you explain what a cap rate is and how to figure that out for a client?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's pretty much the gross income that's coming in minus all expenses. It could be property management, it could be insurance, it could be taxes. So you deduct everything, and that creates the net income. And with that, you divide that by the purchase price, which equates to your cap rate in percentage.
Thank you. Any questions about that in the comments? I know there are a lot of agents that do have an interest in working with investors. So if there are any questions, please leave them in the chat. Laura, as a sphere-based agent, what do you do to stay in touch with your sphere?
So something I decided to do a few years ago was send a quarterly magazine. My personal niche is kind of wellness, so it's called Start Healthy, and it has recipes and different things about healthy living, and my pictures on the front of the magazine, and it's a nice color magazine, and they get it once every 3 months, and then a lot of times people take pictures of it and send it back to me, so it's like kind of a cool maybe text message exchange. And then just since we're in the car a lot over the last decade, I've just tried to make it a point to pick up the phone randomly, because I think it's a lost art just to say hi. So I kind of like right now I have my, list of my sphere marketing list of clients. And every now and then I just go through it and I kind of have, oh, I just saw them on Instagram and they posted that they just got engaged. So maybe I can just pick up the phone. I do definitely like touch on Instagram sometimes, or social media, like congratulations, but I do think that the phone call is just like a, hey, just wanted to call, say hi, no reason, just crossed my mind. And I think that it's just a very natural way and cost efficient way. But the magazine every 3 months is my kind of proactive marketing way. And then the phone calls are my general keep it natural way.
That's awesome advice. Let me get to my next question. And this is for you, Laura. What sort of systems? Oh, let's see what we have in the comments. Oh, yeah, so that question may be for you, Michael, and I see that you're on top of that in the comments. So Laura, what sort of systems do you have in place to guide your clients through a transaction?
So myself and I have an admin, we have an outline that we put together on steps, A to Z from start to finish. And when we sit down, or when I sit down with my clients in the very beginning, for whether it's a buyer or a seller, which I always say the homework is by far the most important time of working with your clients. And during that time, when you sit down and work with them and talk to them, give them your undivided attention, but review everything that's going to happen in the process. I have a piece of paper because I'm old school. I mean, I can send it via PDF and email too, but I like FaceTime, and I'll kind of point to it and just a bullet point of this is what's going to happen. And then I tell them not to worry about the next steps, that when the time comes, I will let them know the next step. So for example, once they go into contract and we're out of attorney review, there's that limbo time. So it's the mortgage contingency period. So that's when I send an email and I've got links to the post office and links to People's Gas and links to ComEd. And that's kind of like okay, here's your next step. As everything's going on in the background, now's the time for you to plan your moves, switching account numbers, getting your addresses. And it's just one of the many little steps, but we try to just let them know along the way. And in the beginning, when I'm being interviewed, part of my spiel, if you will, is to let them know just we're going to make this as seamless as possible, because we're going to outline the steps for you now and discuss it. But then don't worry about anything next. We'll let you know what you need to be working on along the way. It's a little overwhelming, I think, for people to think about it all at once.
And would you say that system is something that you learned as a part of the team, or is that something you implemented along the way in your business?
I definitely implemented it. My background's education, teaching children, and they like to know steps. And I find that adults are really just like children. If we know what's coming next, we can kind of ease our anxiety a little bit. So it's just something I've always done for all of us to kind of know what's next.
Great advice. So Michael, for you, when you're looking for a flip, for one of your investors, what are some of the key elements that you look for in property?
Well, that's kind of a hard question, but I can kind of give you a basic. The reason why is every property is different, and structurally. But generally, you go in, you look for where the water service is, and if it's lead-based, galvanized, or copper. So that's going to be very important, depending on what type of rehab you're about to accomplish. Then the next thing is foundation is a key factor. Water intrusion anywhere on the foundation, you'd have to definitely look at that. And as far as the structure goes, you got to see if the property is leaning and why is it leaning. And sometimes we take those and we can fix them, right? If it's just the front facade. Some of them are not. It's actually the structure is tilting, and those you stay away from. And also the parapet wall, which is like the roof and the wall meeting. So that's always a big thing in Chicago because we're the Windy City. So they tend to deteriorate, and it could be a big expense. So we definitely always check to see what the problem is up there. That's pretty much it. The rest is, we do a lot of gut rehab, so everything else doesn't really matter. We just gut it out and put it all back in.
That's very good advice. Okay, so let me ask Laura a question. So Laura, you've been stepping up your social media game a lot lately. What do you find as the highest return for you on social media?
Well, I mean, true story. I was just doing an Instagram story post, which is like disappears in 24 hours, but so many brokers follow me, like meaning that's half of who follows me, I can tell. And it was, over $1 million listing. And I was like, photo shoot day and just kind of taking pictures. And I got a buyer, never even took it to the next step of listing the photos on Tan or the Pocket or anything. So I think that the stories, I do a lot more in stories, so you don't even know that it's always out there. But I think people follow stories. So that was my biggest return for sure. In general, social media return, I think, is for client engagement. And you kind of get to keep a tab on what they're up to. Like, okay, they bought 5 years ago, they could be thinking about selling, or they might be renovating. All of a sudden you see it in their story, or they reach out to me. I find that some people like to reach out social media instead of texting or calling or emailing. So people ask a lot about projects as well. That means that they're interested in my opinion for the project. So they're not ready to sell yet, but they want my opinion, and then down the road they'll sell with me. So that's what I see the most happen. Or think of me for their friend. Like, hey, do you care if I give your number out to a friend? I'm like, of course. So
that's awesome advice, especially with social media and connecting where people wish to connect with you best. But while we're on that topic, what have been some of the best ways for you to find qualified buyers and sellers? And that question is also for you, Michael.
Okay. Well, I do a lot of online advertising / social media. A couple things is, since I do rehabs, I post everything up now. Actually, one of my team members is who kind of twisted my arm to do that. So I started going on Instagram, just kind of, hey, this is what I'm doing today, guys. I'm on top of a roof. And so that actually caused a lot of traction and a lot of people just reaching out. Investors started to contact me. So that part's been very good. It does work. Also, like even on Facebook, if you have a big group of friends, they start tagging you and sending tags to their friends. So it literally just kind of spider webs out. So I do believe in that, and I know that it works because I get calls like literally all day. I'm sure you guys see me on the phone like 90% of the time, and it's literally because of that kind of stuff happening behind the scenes. I do, as far as, I don't know if this is part of the question, but is advertising part of it? Like,
Sure.
I mean, we do like Zillow, we do, it's called Agent Works, which is actually pretty nice. There's an assistant that warms up the leads for you. And then they just send it to you like, hey, this is what they're looking for, and they're ready in so many months. And then one of my agents, I just forward it to them, and they start handling the client. So it works very well, very affordable, and it's great because they actually warm it up. We don't have to do that part, which is hard because I know with Facebook, I still do it. We'd get like 300 leads a month, literally. The problem is out of those 300, maybe 10 actually are real, and then the rest could just be garbage numbers and whatnot. So we've been kind of working on that and trying to figure out the algorithm to that. And I have a production team doing that. But it does work too. It's just a little bit more, you got to kind of go through it. Yeah.
That's an amazing system. Laura, how about you?
As far as my system, I'm so sorry. I was answering a question about my Start Healthy magazine.
Some of the best ways for you to find qualified buyers and sellers?
Oh, okay. I definitely think that the best way goes back to my first answer, and that's your character every day. I mean, because you're going to get the business from people you cross paths with. And that also goes back to what you're posting, what you're doing, how you're positioning yourself day to day is bringing you the business, I believe. And then so much of my business is referral now, but I believe that referral comes back to my character. So I think that if you talk about yourself in a good light and, if you're sharing information, what you're doing, people will want to work with you.
And speaking to your character, how do you ask your clients for reviews and testimonials?
So I usually wait about a week, maybe 2 weeks. I think people are bombarded when you close with moving, and you're flooding their email if you do it too soon. So depending on the client, usually a couple weeks. And then I have my admin send it, but I used to do it prior to that too, which I send the exact link. I send them everything, so it's super easy. And I just ask them, and I let them know in a sincere email, like, a lot of my success is based off of, people like you and your referrals. Like, would you mind taking the time to provide me a testimonial so I can continue to, help others do what I love to do?
Absolutely. And one last question for you, Laura, then I have a question for the two of you. So at what point in your business did you hire your first team member or assistant?
So it was about year 9 that I paid someone a payroll salary. Prior to that, I merged, relationships with people in the business who we'd help one another. But around year 9, I decided to bring on an admin who only worked at the desk so I could be in the field and cater to clients and not be juggling the emails all day as well. And it was a real game changer.
Awesome. Okay. And Michael, you kind of touched on this, but I'll ask, anyway, just in case you have any more points you want to add. So a portion of your business does come from online lead generation. So what are some of the best ways to convert cold online leads?
Well, so at first I used to kind of try to do that part by myself, but lead gen requires a lot of work because a lot comes in usually when you start, and just weeding that out is very time consuming. So I hired an assistant, which actually ended up joining the team. So that helped a lot, and now we're able to really just move leads from cold to warm to hot because of that. And the team members are more excited too when they receive these leads because they're actually starting to search. As far as the other route is, it's called HomeSnap. I'm sure you heard of it. It's connected to the MLS. That lead gen actually works pretty well. We use it all the time, and we do get, especially like if we have a listing, it tends to really give a lot of traction and turns into some new buyers for our team. So that's a good one.
So, okay, this question is for the two of you. If you had to pick 3 words to describe how you are in your business, what would they be? So, the educator, relationship builder, negotiator, what best describes you? Or 3 words at least.
Okay. I advisor, number one. I always tell my clients that if I do my job right, I will educate you and advise you so you make a sound decision. So that's my first and foremost. And then trustworthy. I want clients to feel safe speaking with me, sharing anything confidential, and creative. So I like to think outside the box. I'm not, I like to get my hands dirty. I like renovations and decorating and things like that too. So people see my creative side when working together. But that would be it. Advisor, trustworthy, and creative.
Awesome. What about you, Michael?
Same. No, I'm kidding. It's pretty much. I think you hit the spot though. I think it would be negotiator. Definitely in this market right now, you got to really kind of make sure you're negotiating correctly for your clients, because sometimes you're overpricing things, right? And you're bidding on some really just, they might like it, but it might not value out. So you definitely got to be a good negotiator. And I think I do that part. As for the team environment, I think I'm a good educator. Everybody seems to like me, so they're still on board. So that's part of that. And yeah, I think creative is definitely another skill I have, and it's a lot of the rehabs that I do. They've all sold. Not one of them sat on the market, so I think I have that.
Amazing. Thank you. And I see Rachel has joined us. Rachel, did you have anything to add? Curtis, your hand is up. Feel free to unmute.
I'll let Curtis go first.
Talking about the rehabs, is there a formula that you use, Michael, or that maybe a developer would use, like the purchase price to what dollar amount you're going, or percentage-wise you're going to put into a house, and what you want to make out of the house percentage-wise to make it a successful flip? Is there some sort of formula?
There is a formula. You could actually find it online, but it's called LTV, so like loan to value. So basically you would take like the after repair value minus your construction costs minus the purchase price, and then it should be at a 70% mark where like there's a 30% cushion. And with that 30% cushion, with all the commissions and everything else going out, you walk away generally with 20%. And that's kind of the average. Most of the time now, with how the market's been, it's more like 15%, just because building materials are higher. I guess you guys probably saw plywood is $60 right now, which was only $25 just a year and a half ago. So you could only see that supply costs are really high. So it's a bit harder to make profit right now. We still do it, just it's not as easy. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. First of all, thank you guys so much for being here. I apologize for running a little bit late today, but I would love to hear from both of you guys, and we'll start with Laura. We're just hearing crazy things in the marketplace. Obviously, to list is to exist. And you just told us that you sold an upcoming listing through Instagram stories and didn't even really have to do too much marketing for it, although one would argue you did exactly what needed to be done, right? So when we talk about advising our buyers, when we talk about how to set buyer expectations in a market like this, and then we'll get to the seller expectations, because there's a whole other can of worms with that, right? Like pricing it correctly and multiple offers. But how are you talking to your buyers right now to get them comfortable, to make them not discouraged? Some of our agents are writing 6 offers a week per buyer, and getting outbid. So what are you seeing, and how are you counseling your buyers?
It's exhausting. Patience and flexibility, and also really knowing what you want. I try to tell people, don't jump just because everyone else is. If you think, it has some of the, great things that you want, but not all of them, just because 5 other people are writing an offer doesn't mean that you have to compete. So so being patient is really what I'm trying to explain, and to figure out what that means for them, if it means a lease or having flexibility where they live, or, because that's what it is. People need to know where they're living. If they don't have the timeline to be patient, how do you do it? So from the very beginning, I talked to them about what is going to be your backup, and kind of just letting them know this, this is not an easy market, but it's also a great time to buy. Interest rates are so low, and you'll get it. If you don't secure it, it wasn't meant to be, but I definitely feel like sharing stories also of other buyers, even if they're not your own. I like to story tell a lot because I think it helps clients realize it's not just them, because everybody thinks it's just them, because everybody's in their own head. They need to understand this is happening to everybody and everybody's dealing with this. So how are you going to approach this? Are you going to freak out, or are you going to be like, okay, this is my comfort zone because Laura's advised me well enough to know that 350, is really the cap of this property. Why would it appraise for more? So why would you offer 365? I also really, right now with the multiple bids, I try to keep my clients at a level where it's not absurd, because that's only going to cause problems down the road. It's not going to praise. We're going to, some people are escalating things to a point where we know it's not even going to work. And when my clients ask to do that, I won't let them do that. We need to go where we know this is what it's worth.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. I think setting expectations at the end of the day is a really big part of the realtor's job, right? And a big part of the reason why you get those referrals in general. Michael, kind of going on the side where you get a lot of leads online, you're obviously doing a lot of flips, you're getting a lot of open house buyers coming through. Obviously, you're probably doing some of the similar things Laura's doing, but how are you counseling your buyers, particularly with your team as well, just to make everybody feel comfortable in this market?
Well, just like Laura said, definitely we do storytell. We have to let them know that, it's literally just not them, multiple, I have multiple clients that were running into the same problem, and I kind of share those stories to them so they feel a little more comfortable. And, every day there's properties going on the market. It's not just this is the only house, you always got to let them know there's always somebody that's got to move somewhere or someplace, and that house is going to be available eventually. So I basically project that and make them feel like it's not the end of the world, and with the rehab side, I probably have an upper hand on that. Sometimes we end up finding them a house that needs a rehab, and we just do the rehab for them and put them into a property they like. But for most, I think they don't have that. So it's more you just kind of have to walk with them, through the journey. You really have to pay attention. And probably, I think what I noticed was not be disconnected. You always just kind of call them, hey, how you doing? I've been searching. I haven't found anything now, but I've been looking in the private network. Here's a few things that might be coming up. So I think the private network lately has been helping a lot more than in the past. I don't know if anyone else has seen that, but for me, I've actually been in contract because of the private network a few times, and it's been good because agents are now starting to pre-list, not like as before, I think. So. Right.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Melanie asked a really great question in the chat, and as we move into sellers, so we'll get to her question first, because I think it's really important. She asked, how do you counsel individuals who want to sell their current home because it is a seller's market, but they know that because it's a seller's market, they're nervous about finding something themselves to buy, especially because, as you guys know, right, when you're already a seller, you already feel like, I know what it is to own. I'm not willing to compromise on certain things that new buyers might, right? So it can be really difficult to navigate those waters. So what are you guys doing when you're talking to potential clients who are looking to sell, but they're worried about the inventory level on the buy side?
Well, I'm actually in that problem right now. I have Sunnyside on the market now, right after we got into contract for a property that we've been battling for. We finally got it. We won. So we're in contract there, and that took a lot of convincing. So what we ended up doing is we put the property in the private network to show the sellers of the property that my clients were going to purchase, to at least let them know that we're ready. Just we haven't put it up because we need to find a house first. And that's kind of how I was able to fill in the gap, the bridge. And now we're kind of in both transactions right now and possibly a buyer for their property. So that's kind of how I handled that situation. It was tricky though. It was definitely tricky.
Did
It's a
the seller
balance.
need to close in order to
sorry?
buy? Did the seller need to close in order to buy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, both ways actually. So on their end, the sellers were moving into a property. So I was on the buy side originally and turned into a buy sell. So they had to sell their townhouse in order to buy the house that they put in an offer for. So it was a very intricate, timely situation where if I made one wrong move, the purchase would have fell apart, and I would never have gotten the listing as well. But I was able to, by letting them, or putting the property under the private network, showing the sellers on the other end that, hey, we have it, it's ready to list, we just need to get you guys to sign, accept our offer, that sort of situation.
Awesome. Laura, what about you? Like when you're getting referrals or when your past clients from 5-6 years ago are calling and saying, Laura, this market's great. What do you think I could get from the place? But I'm not seeing anything I like come up online.
Which is most of it, because what you did, Michael, is like a unicorn to be able to have the other party let you like sign a contract without selling first. Most people wouldn't do that. So again, it goes back to the education. I let my sellers know we have to be prepared and get your place ready. Like you're doing the dual, like let's focus on getting your place ready for photos. And then after we get the photos done, and then we're going to do our work, due diligence to get it on the market. I specifically ask for a couple weeks to do pocket marketing. Once we get the photos, do some, brochures, everything. So it's a 2-week process generally. During that 2-week, after they've exhausted themselves getting the house ready, we'll also go out and look at properties. So I can at least educate them on their price point, whatever they're looking at, knowing that they can't buy. I tell them that you're not allowed to fall in love. This is not, a time to write an offer. Like we are just simply looking at, if you're looking between, $750 and $900, let's go see what the market has. And I tell every buyer, we're going to see the good, the bad, the ugly. Like, I'm not going to just show you what you want to see. I'm going to show you a little below and a little above. So then we can determine pricing. Yeah. And so once we do that, and then we go on the market, if it sells in a minute or it sells in a month, we don't know. And I, again, prepare them for that. I'm like, we just don't know. So I don't know what you're going to buy and what's going to be available, because I tell every client, and I swear I say it every day, real estate's day by day. Like we don't know what's going to pop up tomorrow. So let's not exhaust ourselves worrying about what's going to be available when you sell. Once you sell, then we're going to see what's on the market and available. But because we already did our homework and kind of your price point range, we can now explore pockets. And because I will never take anyone in a pocket unless they've been out before, explore pockets and go from there. I mean, if they can't find anything, but they sell, then I focus on, now you have the nugget that you need to buy. And this is where that flexibility, like, do you have parents? Can you do an Airbnb? Do you have a place in Michigan since we're working from home? Everybody has somewhere. Like, there's always somewhere. So we kind of talk about that. And some people manage to find it quickly and others don't. But everybody, for some way or another, always finds a place to live, and I help them with the rental if they need to, just the short-term rental, giving them ideas where to go, letting them know we'll seek for you. But it usually turns out that it's a month or two, and it's someone they know and they have flexibility.
That's a good point. I mean, I think a big part of it too is you don't want to miss the market. Right? We saw that in 2018. Like, it was a hot to trot year. Everything was going crazy. And a lot of sellers saw what happened in spring, went on in fall, and then everything just like deadpanned in the fall of 2018 for no reason. Right? But real estate like halted. And all of 2019 was like stuttering and stopping. and it never really picked up. And then 2020 we had COVID. So it's like part of that conversation with the seller is you can't bet against the market, right? You could just keep waiting for that top of the hill, but tomorrow, to your point, it's day by day, that hill could go right down and now you've
Right.
missed that. Or rates could go up and buyers aren't going to be there.
Right.
So I think that's a good point. And Olenka asked a good question. I think this kind of goes to the sellers and the buyers. So if you guys could answer from both sides, right? And this goes into, again, finding qualified buyers and sellers, because you guys both describe yourself as educators. So when you get those referrals, but you know, we've talked about how a lot of listings are getting multiple offers. There's escalation clauses, things are selling far and above, and sometimes it's not appraising out, right? So how are you educating both the buyers to understand what that implication could be, but also coaching the sellers? Because we got some sellers who are like, heck yeah, I'm going to get 40,000 over asking, but we all know that that might not happen. And they're so hung on that number that they're not willing to like make it work with the appraisal. So how are you kind of educating both those buyers and sellers to make sure that there is that smooth transaction?
Go ahead.
I don't care. For me, it comes down to the very beginning with going through your comps. Like if you did your homework as the broker and you tell them this is the price, like meaning it's a little subjective, right? Like this is around, you know, if we list at $599, you could get over asking, you know. So why don't we put it on the pocket as $625 and test the market there? If there's a demand, we should definitely see something, you know, and if we do or don't. And then if we do go on the market at $599, and prior to that, we kind of talk about how maybe $610 would really be pushing our limits for an appraisal. So at $599, the seller's already agreed to that. So I always stress to everybody, it only takes one. Like, I'm not a huge multiple bid girl. Like, I think sellers should not focus on that. I think it's our responsibility as brokers to kind of talk them out of the multiple bid and just to talk them into the strong contract. Because I had to mentor like a month ago, someone about this who received 7 offers on their listing, and the seller wanted 680 and it was listed at 599. But all the other offers came in between like 625 and 640. And then there was a 680 and the seller wanted it. I spent hours talking them out of advising their seller to take it. I'm like, how could you possibly think that it's going to appraise at that? And you didn't do a good job then. If you told them 599 and it's 81,000 above, you're setting yourself up to shoot yourself in the foot, you know, if you truly believe it's not worth it. So they ended up taking like 641 because, you know, that was the next lowest, and we don't have the appraisal in yet. But point is, like, you have to talk them into the realistic tone of what it's worth before you even list it, and talk to them about that and let them know if you're listing it under because you are intentionally doing that for multiple bid, or if you're listing high to test the waters, if you can secure it. They should know if you're going to have a price reduction before you even have a price reduction. Like, my clients know if I'm going to be asking them for that after 2 weeks. You know, if we list here, but we don't have an offer yet, you're coming down 25 grand, and they'll already know it from day one, like the strategy of it. So I think it's just setting expectations. Again, I know it's a broken record sort of conversation, like, but the more you can tell them in the beginning, the easier it is for them to come to reality when some other broker allowed their buyer to give an absurd number that's never going to appraise. They're just trying to secure the deal. They're probably the scariest buyers to sign the contract with.
But that's a really good point. And you kind of brought this up. And Michael, I'd love to hear your opinion too. But I think it's become really easy to be a realtor, right? And it's pretty easy to find buyers right now because everyone's trying to buy. And so a lot of the realtors bringing those buyers and writing those offers aren't as educated, and they're not explaining the process to those buyers. And sometimes those sellers, they start seeing those escalation clauses. They start getting that like, ooh, my listing is super hot. But at the end of the day, like you just said, like if their agent is telling them this place is worth 35,000 over, that's a problem. And that
Right.
buyer's in for a really big disappointment at the end of the day. And so are you, because you're going to accept it. You want to accept an offer of 35 over, but that appraisal is going to come in here. So you're
Right.
going to feel like you lost at the end of the day. And some buyers agents are just telling their clients just that. Remember how like some buyers always tell the agents used to say to their buyers, as is doesn't really mean as is, right? You still get the inspection. Now
Right.
I feel like the mantra is, if it appraises over, you're protected, so it's fine.
Right.
Just make the offer. You know,
Right.
Michael, what are you seeing?
Well, so I totally agree with Laura on everything on that. But then there's also that other situation where the appraisal numbers haven't caught up to the market. I don't know if anyone's seen that, but it's like 6 months behind almost.
Yeah.
And so like it will catch up, because if you look at the pending offers out there, and it's slowly inclining. It's just sometimes the appraisal numbers aren't matching what the market is right now. So there's that situation. And on the sell side, if in case there is a price above asking and we already know that it's not going to appraise, because I already done a CMA and I definitely know that it's probably like $25,000-$30,000 above an appraisal number, most likely. We would definitely have to entertain to the buyers like, hey, you're going to have to sign this appraisal waiver if you're going to send this offer to us, because we already know that that's not going to be a realistic number. And that also depends, I think, truly on the price point of the house as well. So if you're like in $1 million home, $1 million buyers are way different than your $400,000 buyers, right? They're buying for comfort, right? And how they feel about the house, versus like in the 400s or 300s or anything down that road, they're buying for, is this going to value later on, right? So it really depends. Or are you going to stay there for 30 years, right? Which I had a client like that. It was going to be their forever home. It was going to be a ranch, very nice. They did not care if they're going past appraisal numbers. They were just like, we'll buy it as long as you think it's going to appraise out in 30 years. I was like, well, eventually it will. And so they went up $25,000 above the appraisal number. For sure, I know it will. And their second previous buyers that these sellers had backed out because of that. And so I already knew it wasn't going to appraise out, so I prepared my client. They were ready. So it's very dependent on the buyer themselves, or the nature of the purchase, right? But I agree on everything else Laura said. Other than that, like that, the appraisals are not caught up yet.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much. Does anybody have any other questions? I think I've kept up with the chat pretty well. But does anybody have any questions for Laura or Michael? No? Okay, no worries, no worries. Well, I want to thank you guys both so much for your time today. We asked you guys to be here because you're both hustling, you both are doing tons of business, but you also kind of get them both, yes, from your sphere, but from slightly different areas as well. So thank you so much for passing on that knowledge onto all of us. Thank you, Leah, for leading the charge today on it. I appreciate it. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Laura and Michael, hopefully we've got some agents in here who are going to write some offers on your listings. Who knows? Sell it through Coaching to Confidence.
Thank you. Have a great
Bye,
day,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.